witness the birth of the incredible Nintendo Entertainment System? The one to play with Rob, the extraordinary video robot, batteries not included. He helps you tackle even the toughest challenge. Will you be the first to raise the incredibly accurate Zapper and play games like Duck Hunt or action-packed Hogan's Alley and high-flying Kung Fu, each sold separately? Will you be the one to experience the Nintendo Entertainment System? Comes with Rob, Zapper, Control Deck, 2 controllers, Gyromite, and Duck Hunt.
And so here we are. October 18th will be the 40th anniversary of the Nintendo Entertainment System in the United States. I am Maestro Drake. This will probably be the last Maestro, Juego, and Maestro Politico. I don't think I could do these topics for much longer. Most of you don't want to see me do gameplay for gameplay's sake. I tried. I'll probably save them for TikTok. So for TikTokers and X and all that, I'm sure you'll like it more. But anyway, so the 40th anniversary of Nintendo's entertainment system will come out for October 18th. But it's been a very lackluster anniversary, isn't it? It's been a very sad one. Because we're facing some current issues. Now, before I get to the current issues, we are going to focus on the history of things. Nintendo came out with the Black Series with games like Metroid and Kid Icarus alongside the Black Box series like Super Mario Brothers, Donkey Kong Jr., Donkey Kong 3, Gyromite for the Rob, Clue Land, Hogan's Alley, Donkey Kong Jr. Math, and I wish I still have a lot of those games. It was a revolutionary time. Not just because here was another system. This system killed the Atari. Nintendo killed the Atari. It just killed it. And not only that, like when everybody thought maybe the 7800 would be it, this is the thing we ended up selling at the swap meets. Because my parents showed the Rob to me and I said, nah, I don't need it. And that was 1993. Yeah, that was a dumbass move I made. But moving on to the popularity of the Nintendo over the Atari, over Commodore 64, over the ZX Spectrum. Nintendo killed it. And it wasn't just that it came out, it was a cultural shift. Because the perception of video gamers weren't just people at the pinball arcades or people playing Space Invaders. Like people with Atari, they have Atari iron-on patches that you put on like army jackets, army green canvas jackets, and you would see like Atari iron-on patches for like how many things you would cut. Like they were like Atari tournaments, like how many points you scored, right? With Space Invaders, with Centipede, with Pac-Man, with the original Donkey Kong, with all kinds of games. And that was the perception of video gamers, just playing old school spaceship games until the Nintendo came along. And the cultural shift shifted. JD Roth with GamePro TV. Yo, dude, what's going on, dude? Like the whole perception of what gamers were about. These kids, however they're actors, represented what gamers were about. If you look at GamePro TV, the first season, you had like real people, real kids from ages 7 to 14, like calling in or submitting their photo, but submitting their scores and what their high achievement was. Gone are the days where you would turn out the lights, close the curtains, close the door, and take a bright picture of your video game screen achievements. That was also a Nintendo Power. You also had game shows like Video Power, Johnny Arcade, and Funhouse, Double Dare. There was a whole cultural shift, and they did have exclusive contracts, so any third party had to work with Nintendo and nobody else. But that was a red flag that we wouldn't see for years. Then came the TurboGrafx 16, which introduced me to 16-bit graphics. But then came the war. Now, everybody's been going back to those old advertisements of Super Nintendo games being $90, $94 or something for Doom, which I got Doom for the Super Nintendo for like $15 to $20 used at a swap meet. So, sometimes the best things come to those who wait. If you wait till you get to the swap meets, then you might find something on sale. I didn't get every single Super Nintendo game brand new, or even every Nintendo game brand new. But this was the war going on. Like, our games are cheaper. You don't have to pay $80 or $90 for a Super Nintendo game, or for Earthbound. Earthbound might have been expensive because it came with a guide. Then you had the Super Scope 6 and all these gimmicky things that would, like, you would have to buy things for the full experience of Super Nintendo games. I think Terminator 2, the arcade game, had a Super Scope 6 and even Super NES mouse applications. Genesis, they had like, 32X and what the Sega CD was. They were the first people to do CD-based stuff before the PlayStation. Now, I think once we get to the Nintendo PlayStation, this was the dividing point. At this point, Nintendo was still cool. They were making the Virtual Boy, which didn't make them cool, but with the Game Boy outlasting the Sega Game Gear and the TV tuner Sega Game Gear or system, the TurboGrafx portable, the Turbo Duo, whatever it's called, the little TurboGrafx system, all the other handhelds, the Atari Lynx, the Game Boy beat it out. And Nintendo proved that they could make handhelds. They really knew how to make the Game Boy, the Nintendo, minus the Virtual Boy, but they were still on a roll. The red flags weren't there yet until we got to the Nintendo PlayStation. And they had decided they were not going to make disc-based games. They had, at that time, seemingly legitimate reasons to make games on cartridges. That's why they got to the N64. And they said, well, good luck with that PlayStation. And they must have been like banging their heads against the wall the minute that PlayStation did well. I mean, it beat out 3DO and Jaguar and CDI Philips in terms of sales. And Nintendo made deals with CDI Philips to make shitty Zelda games. Shitty Zelda games. With the N64, I got it a year later. I just hung on to my Game Boy Color. At that time, I got a Game Boy Color. I didn't pay attention to anything else. But Rareware's games got me hooked onto it. More than Tomb Raider with the pointy breasts, Lara Croft, and Croc or Crash Bandicoot. I liked Super Mario 64 more than Crash Bandicoot, but it was tough to get used to that analog stick and 3D gaming. The GameCube I would get probably after the Game Boy Advance and after the Sega Dreamcast. Now that thing's a big old brick, but I still have mine. And that was the other strange thing about it was that I remember seeing a copy of the Q version, which could play DVDs. And that was only in Japan, but they never released the DVD version here in America. What were they? They were so afraid. Nintendo was so afraid that people would copy their discs. I mean, I know there were Dreamcast copy discs, but were they so afraid of people copying their games and made little discs? And it was a weird type of format that I only saw one time at the Pomona County Fair, the sort of the 3.5-inch diameter discs that they're so famous for. They just didn't really want anybody having full-size discs and copies of games, I guess. But there was a DVD version of the GameCube, so I remember that well. The Wii I got years late, and the Wii U I got really years late. I recall this might have been Electronic Gaming Monthly. I don't think it was Game Informer. But I recall an issue of Electronic Gaming Monthly where somebody was talking about asking Nintendo for review copies of GameCube games. We're working on it. When are you going to get this? We're working on it. Well, what's going to happen here? We're working on it. And so they deduced that we're working on it means you're not getting shit. So for some reason, Nintendo allegedly would not send review copies to reviewers for magazines. That's what I read somewhere. I think it was an issue of EGM. You go back to another red flag. Going back a few years. Now, there was Super Mario Bros. X, right? Super Mario Bros. X got canceled for Super Mario Maker. And this is where people could make their own levels, make their own games, but that got shut down by Nintendo for Super Mario Maker. Same thing with another Metroid 2 remake, that got shut down for the 3DS title. But I think this kind of was the worst example because while there might have been some people who were trying to make money with Kickstarters and get sued by Nintendo, that does happen. But then there were people who were just trying to create games for fun. With this one here, I think the sob story was that this one got shit canned for Super Mario 35, which is gone now, right? It's not even there anymore. It's not even there anymore. It was there for a limited time, and then Nintendo wrote this bullshit survey saying, "Oh, would you all like to have seen more of Super Mario Bros. 35? Would you like to see it stay?" They never brought it back, right? It's gone, isn't it? Last time I checked, isn't it still gone? You can't play Super Mario Bros. 35. You can't even get Pac-Man 99 on the online. They stopped a lot of things. To be fair, Sony does that same thing too with their. They stopped a lot of different things, but Nintendo shut down their eShops and Nintendo Video. Some of the stuff that was for 3DS, they stopped repairing Wii U's. So there was a lot of things they stopped doing. Even if it could make them extra money, they wouldn't do it. They wouldn't continue to fix Wii U's. If your Wii U is broken, that's it. So this was a great game. And then I think the people who made this game, they sort of flipped the assets to something legal, and they still got shit canned by Nintendo. And Nintendo will come after you, okay? The DMCA stuff is no joke. And then with Angry Joe, he did. I remember when he did live streams for Mario Party. I don't know about Mario Kart, but he definitely did Mario Party, and he also did Zelda. He did a Zelda review, and Nintendo had worked with the YouTube Partners program to like shut down people or capitalize on people's videos. The videos were transformative, but they didn't give a shit. So there were a lot of problems. So Joe had the problem with Zelda. And that was years ago. And Joe has not forgotten this stuff. This was, what is it? That's, oh yeah, Mario Party 10. That was the live stream. Yeah. They got copyright claimed copyright claimed because, as Joe said, if I can't make any money, I'll be damned if Nintendo makes the money. So there were a lot of red flags long before we got to 2025. I mean, I think there were so many criminal cases. Wasn't there one without somebody who was called Wario, and he was or Jew Wario, something like that. Somebody was hacking in to find out the future games of Nintendo that weren't going to be announced or released yet, and then they got jail time. Some people got jail time, serious jail time, with no possibility of parole. That's what happens when you fuck with Nintendo; they could come after you. And so Nintendo is when it comes to fan games or doing something really bad, they'll come after you. So it's hard for anybody to. Nobody wants to do any projects because there's a fear of repercussions. Even if their intentions are free of charge, Nintendo's still a corporation. They cancel the Virtual Console for a reason. They cancel certain games for a reason. Okay, like the Super Mario 3D All Stars. Remember that? Where you got to buy Super Mario Sunshine on a cart and you could play it forever on your Nintendo Switch. Now, Super Mario Sunshine is going to be part of the Nintendo Online service. Why would they want 3D All Stars to be accessible to you when you have to continue paying to have access to it? You cannot own Super Mario Sunshine. Now you have to have access to it because it's a corporation. Nintendo's got to make the money. Gone are the days when you had Satoru Iwata, rest in peace, because I think when Satoru died, after he passed, a lot of things changed. He took a hit from his own paycheck to keep people in the company. Okay. Reggie Fils-Aimé with the Wii Sports, making that free. Shigeru, well, he created the characters. I would love to know what he thinks. If Shigeru Miyamoto quits his job, quits working at Nintendo, that would be a big, like, sledgehammer to the balls, to the brass of Nintendo, because if he goes, that's it. Okay. So Satoru's passed on. Reggie's out there somewhere, but he quit GameStop. He worked at GameStop for a short time. If Miyamoto goes, that's it. It's like the Stamper brothers leaving Microsoft when Rare was struggling, okay? When the Stamper brothers left, Rare was dead. People knew it. They saw the writing. And it's that trio that made things possible. And in some ways, these people remind me of Mr. Howard Phillips, who was the president at Nintendo from the 80s. There he is now. He's working on educational games, but I would think that if he's watching all that's going on, obviously he's going to be kind of hush-hush about being nasty at Nintendo because he worked there. I mean, when you work at a company, you tend to have a little bit of professional courtesy, as I'm sure like people like Kit and Krista. Kit and Krista are probably the only two people that have the best information, like the whole $90 thing. The $90 price tag was beans. It's not too far from the truth if you count $80 plus tax, but still, it wasn't like $90. It's not $90 retail. It's just $90 as a philosophical whole. But anyway, there's Nestor. They had to do the whole Howard and Nestor thing for what is it? Nintendo Power. There's Nintendo Power. Game Master Classified does not. If that doesn't bring back memories for anybody my age, I don't know what does. The latest fiasco. Now, keep in mind with the Nintendo Switch 1, I had to wait until October of 2017, like almost, like probably almost to the time of Thanksgiving to get one of the Nintendo Switches. NES Classic I was not interested in, but I was interested in the Super Nintendo Classic. Now, to be true told, there was a Super NES Classic at a Target, but I did not buy it. I was too angry at Nintendo. And what had happened was I was trying to get a hold of this because it had Star Fox 2. For the first time ever, those people who were teenagers and they missed out on Star Fox 2 because they didn't put it out, we would get a chance to play it. I didn't play Star Fox 2 until last year, I think. Yeah, it was last year. I had to wait almost 30 years of my life to play Star Fox 2. Now, I played the beta version and it was a bootleg Super NES Classic, but I wasn't mad at the person who sold it to me. I was more mad at Nintendo because there were bot scalpers on fucking Amazon who fucking took advantage of the midnight time. It was a time sensitive bot scalp that they bought up those Super NES Classics and nobody got them. It was a sale that went terribly wrong. And Nintendo at that time did not care. They just said, don't buy from scalpers. Wow, that's really helpful. So you couple that with everything else. So I can't, with the solution to, what is the solution to this problem? Yes, there are high tariffs and there are reasons there. Okay, between the coronavirus and whatever problems that Vietnam and China are doing, that's a political thing. And honestly, from my feeling is that if China and Vietnam can fix their non-game, video game related issues such as drugs, gangs, weapons, anything that has to do with making our country worse, okay? Fixing their conditions for how viruses are tested, okay? If China hasn't fixed their problems of not releasing another coronavirus, why should we lower tariffs? That's my feeling of it, okay? That's my thing with China. Now, for Nintendo to make test systems like, test kits, they make those themselves. But for mass production, they need Vietnam, they need China. For this is the biggest thing for them. And for third-party developers, they want to put out the most that they've already made without having to spend money. AI is a big thing, and I'm willing to bet that the Switch 2 has become AI friendly, so that AI could do a lot of the work for the developers without having to hire teams of people. Why should we take 3 years to make the next AAA game? We could take a year and use AI. That's like big companies want to save as much money as possible and not have to. I mean, big corporations want to put out AAA games with little effort or little money to spend, little time, and get the most profit. It just makes sense. It's common sense as far as that goes. I did watch a guy's YouTube video about how backwards compatibility was going to be a problem for a lot of these games for third parties, and that's probably true. So now it's like, what is one to do when you can't count on backwards compatibility, much like the Xbox 360 to Xbox original games? So there's a lot that they have going as far as what they want. Okay, Nintendo just wants to put out new product to keep up with the because they do need the third-party people. They never admit this out loud, but they do need the third-party people. The Wii U had very, very little acceptance from third parties, and Game Informer told me of this even during that time when there was not a Switch yet, when it was still called the NX. So between the possible backwards compatibility issues, between AI probably doing the work for AAA companies that want to do AAA, there are always going to be people like the people that made Star Overdrive and Ironfall Invasion. A lot of independent parties still want to do it the old-fashioned way and make games with a team of people, or maybe 3 or 4 people, in a room, just like when they made Star Wars. They made Star Wars with 100 people, and in a garage, they were able to make the Death Star set, the big play set, to have Luke go with his X-Wing over to make that first Star Wars movie back in 1977. Okay? So there are still old-fashioned people ready to go to make your games the way they were originally made back in the 80s, 90s, and 2000s and last decade. But things are different. AI is kind of taking over a lot of people's thinking. And while I do like AI in some areas, where I put them, I like to see games made by real hands, by real minds, by real creative juices, by real creative talk and relationship of ideas. Not too many cooks in the kitchen, but just enough people who are sort of in that uh, certain fraternities for certain games. Maybe a different fraternity or sorority for different types of games. Not the exact same people, right? So when the Stamper Brothers left Rare, that was kind of a blow. It changed the shape of what Rare games would be like from that point on. And if Miyamoto quits, I'm not saying he is, but if Miyamoto hypothetically were to quit, that will change the shape of Nintendo games. It really will. Still don't like Donkey Kong's face. So what the solution could be is you could make a Switch 2 Lite, no Joy-Con capabilities, no docking, basic USB-C port cable, and it comes with one game, probably just over 300. Let's say, I'll be generous here. Let's say 349 or 339. Okay, 339 to 349 US retail for a Switch 2 game, a Switch 2 Lite, like the Switch 1 Lite, LCD screen, pack in Mario Kart World. Everybody's happy at least. But these high prices, and somebody kept spreading the rumor of $90 games. That's not going to be for Mario Kart World. Other games, maybe somewhere. I think people would argue that because you had $70 Zelda game for the Switch 1, why would you have a $90 retail game for Switch 2? That's sensible to argue that, but you can't argue that now. I was playing a Switch 1 game while the Switch 2 presentation was happening because it's too much work now. These systems and these games get more and more and more expensive. Nintendo's attitude towards with DMCA and fan games and the way they handle things, the way they talk to people or don't talk to people about prices, the way they just been acting ever since the Nintendo PlayStation has turned me the fuck off. And Gabe Newell with the Valve, with the Steam Deck, the Steam Deck could have fallen apart like the Steam machines, and it didn't. You could buy regular micro SD cards and play your games the way you want to. I'm playing Ratchet and Clank Rifts Apart in slow motion, but it's my Ratchet and Clank, and you could buy Express SD cards on your Steam Deck if you want to. But what really matters to me is having my own experience, my own way. I'm playing Star Overdrive, a timed exclusive on the Nintendo Switch 1, because it's been overlooked in all this chaotic nonsense. And I really enjoy it, even though it's not the hype stuff right now. It's what I enjoy. It's my personal enjoyment. And I think that's what we have to do. You have you youngsters in your 20s and teens to early 30s, you don't know how well you have it right now. You could go to a retro store and get anything, a Dreamcast, a Neo Geo Pocket, a Game Boy Color, a Atari 2600. There are clone consoles. You could get a PlayStation 1, a little PlayStation 1, a PlayStation 2, a PlayStation 3. You could get a Neo Geo. You could do whatever you have to do to get off trying to get the latest system. And this fucking game here should not cost, I think it's costing $10. It shouldn't cost any dollars. It should come in free with the fucking Nintendo Switch Lite 2 when they come out with that one. Because AR games, those weren't money. The AR games where you shot the card with the Game Boy with the 3D camera on the 3DS, that was free. Even the Face Raiders game was free. So that's all I have to say on that. And I wish you all luck. Be happy with what you have. Make the most of your happiness having experiences and not so much investments. For this video, we'll end in 3, 2,